I'm in the heart of the Amazon. Everything here can harm you. Jaguars, snakes, spiders. But they're not the worst. There's something here that's even more terrifying.
I've come here to find the infamous army ant, a creature so ferocious it's earned the title King of the Jungle.
Their jaws can be almost half their body size. Once they start moving, they're unstoppable. And legend has it, they can take down anything in their path, including me.
I'm Dominic Monaghan. All my life, I've been driven by two strong passions: acting and wild creatures. Since I was a kid, I've dreamt of traveling the planet to get my hands on the rarest, scary, and most dangerous animals out there. And now, I finally have my chance.
I'm in Quito, capital city of Ecuador. I'm actually heading into the jungle to look for an animal known as Eciton bucellii, or, to the Western world, the infamous army ant. Check this out.
These guys are no joke. Armed with giant mandibles capable of tearing human flesh and venomous stingers, they'll take down prey hundreds of times their size. Hunting in swarms that can reach 1 million ants. Rumor has it they've stripped cows to the bone and driven entire families from their villages. And they're known as the king of the jungle for that reason. That's no small feat. You imagine they're in the jungle. There's jaguars, there's venomous snakes, there's anacondas. I want to find out exactly what type of damage these ants can inflict. And I'm going to do that by putting myself in the firing line a little bit. I want to see how painful these things are, how many stings it takes for me to run screaming away from these animals as well. To find them, I'll have to journey deep within the Amazon to one of the most remote scientific outposts on the planet. After a flight across the Andes, I'll travel down the Napo River, hitch a ride on one of the region's few roads, then hop a canoe for the final stretch. My first stop is Coca, a gritty frontier town that serves as a gateway to the Amazon.
I have about an hour to kill before my boat, so I'm going to do one of my favorite things, which is eat some street food, which is right over here. Sí, sí. Oh, muchas gracias. Una agua, por favor.
Yeah.
The great thing about this fish is it's fresh out in the Amazon. That's good eating. It's always good to pick a big chili pepper. It's usually not as hot as the small ones. Oh, it's not hot at all. Oh, that's a lie. It is hot.
I thought getting through that chili would be the tough part of this meal, but then the owner invites me to try a local delicacy.
Oh, wild. This is a grub of a beetle. That is not a good texture. That's like a living, pulsating marshmallow. This is the fried version of that.
Con palmito.
It doesn't smell especially good. It's like, I don't know, smoky poop. I think the best thing to do in these situations is just to kind of not think about it too much and just dive in. Head last. Ready? It's actually not bad.
Finally, we hit the water, and my trip into the Amazon begins. 30 kilometers downstream, we leave the water for one of the few roads hacked through this jungle. Hours later, we reach the end of the road, and as I wait for the guide to take me down the final stretch of river, I can't resist the lure of the jungle.
First chance to actually have a look around the Amazon rainforest. So check it out. These moths are called urania moths, and they look just like butterflies. Now, the way that you can tell it's a moth from close up is this big, fat abdomen that they have. But like lizards, snakes, anything that eats insects is gonna be happy with that meal, because that is a big, fat abdomen. All right, buddy, Thanks for hanging out. Just gonna put you down. All right, let's go see what we can see. A friend of mine told me a long time ago, when you're tracking for anything, you want to walk small, but look big. So your eyes need to be everywhere in the jungle.
Just a few meters from the road, I discover one of the army ants' less lethal cousins.
These are leafcutter ants. And they're going down here into their nest. Leafcutter ants are in colonies, sometimes 2 million strong, and they constantly work throughout the day and the night. And also, absolutely amazing thing is that on top of the leaf that the worker ant is carrying are rider ants. What these ants do is to protect the worker that is carrying the leaf. And when the worker's carrying the leaf, its mandibles are relatively wide open.
And there's a parasitic fly
That is able to go into the mandibles and inject its eggs inside the ant, which will eventually kill it. The rider ant's job is to walk around on the leaf and make sure that none of these parasitic animals are coming down and hurting the worker ant, whose job is to bring food back for the colony. There's a big, big soldier. Ow! Nice. Yep. This guy's doing his job. You got to admire that. But I think, look at that. That is a perfectly straight bite. This was an army ant, I'd be running, screaming at this point.
Back on the water, I start the final stage of my journey to the remote Tipitini research station, where I'll meet up with renowned army ant expert Sean O'Donnell.
I finally arrived in the heart of the Amazon.
But the most challenging part of this expedition is still ahead. Tracking down a fast-moving and highly dangerous killing machine in the largest and most lethal jungle on the planet.
It is incredibly humid here. Roasting hot. I don't think I've stopped sweating since I've got here. It feels almost oppressive. Feels like things are kind of closing in on you. So many places for animals to hide. I get this feeling that things are looking at me, almost stalking me. It's an interesting feeling. Kind of exciting. Just hope it's not a jaguar. It's a ficus tree. Amazing tree. Absolutely ginormous. Look how tall it goes. A tree of this size can't stand up straight unless it has these roots that come out of the ground to support it. They're almost like walls. I mean, look, these things are bigger than me. And these roots themselves spread all over the jungle. Such a powerful tree, and it'll sustain so much animal life that lives in there, you know? Oh, check it out, check it out, check it out. This is a rhinoceros beetle, one of the largest beetles in the world. Now, this is a male. You can tell it's a male by this crazy protuberance at the front of its snout here, which it uses in battles with other males. It spends most of its life as a grub, lives in the middle of a hollowed out piece of tree, and then it becomes this adult version, which is just a mammoth of a beetle. Looks like kind of a monster, you know, with these big spiky feet. Looks like a little mini dinosaur. Thanks, mate. I'll let you go now. So I've arrived at the Tipitini Research Center in the Amazon rainforest to find out as much as I can about the army ants and see if they deserve the reputation as the king of the jungle. Hey.
Hey.
Hey, how
I'm
are
here
you?
to meet army ant expert Sean O'Donnell
Good to meet you.
Good to meet you.
and local
Hi.
guide Jose Macanila Grefa.
Jose?
If
Dominic.
anyone can track down the volunteers needed for my man versus army ant test, it's going to be them.
Army ants are mobile, And that's one of the things that makes them really challenging. So they're moving through the forest constantly. So if we're going to go out and look for army ants, we're going to have to do some hiking.
To kick off our mission, Sean first wants to give me a better sense of just how much territory we're going to have to cover. He's taken me to a massive observation tower built to study the forest canopy.
So it's about 40 meters up to the platform up there. The view will just be fantastic.
Sweet. Okay.
It's a great opportunity, but I have a slight confession to make.
I don't like heights. So this is going to be a pretty interesting part of my day. I guess there's no time like the present.
I have no problem handling venomous snakes and insects, but the thought of climbing this tower is scaring the hell out of me.
I just get completely out of my comfort zone when I'm up high. See how much I'm hugging the inside of this stair rail? Almost there. Almost there. Nice. Whew. That was a heck of a climb. It's interesting. My fear of heights kind of goes away when I'm in a place that's a little bit more spread out. And also when you get something up here that's solid, like this piece of tree, I just don't quite feel the height. It's when I look down, I'm aware of the height. But the top of the canopy, or actually above the canopy, which is where we are right now, is an ecosystem in its own right. In fact, the majority of the animals live up here. There's much more sunlight. It's interesting to think of these places kind of like an ocean. Right now, we're at the surface of the ocean. You'd find much more different life at the surface of the ocean than where we've been for the majority of the time, which is at the floor of the ocean. I have 360-degree views of the rainforest up here, and it's absolutely ginormous. Kind of puts into perspective the search for these tiny, minuscule ants that we're doing.
Safely back on terra firma, it's time to start the mission.
What we're really looking for is a stream of ants, and they'll be in kind of a single file line. And what we're hoping to find is their trail crossing our trail.
Oh, wow.
These are close relatives of the ants we're looking for. This is a katydid. See
Yeah.
the spines?
On the
They
plane.
can actually use that to grab prey, just like a mantis.
Hay comida.
These are lemon ants. Because they taste kind of lemony. Quite tasty.
This is a pretty interesting looking caterpillar here, Sean.
Oh, great find.
What can you tell me about this guy?
That is a very, very nasty animal. And those spines are basically like hypodermic syringes. They've probably got venom glands at the base of them, and they're very, very sharp. Most caterpillars actually are active at night. The ones that are out feeding out in the open like this in daylight are usually pretty toxic, and my guess would be if you brushed up against that, it would be a really, really painful experience.
Wow. You wouldn't have thought a caterpillar would do you that much damage, huh?
Yeah, you really just kind of have to watch yourself with almost everything down here. So as we're walking through the forest, it's a good idea to just be aware of where you're putting your feet, where you're putting your hands. A couple years back, and I was bitten on the foot by a viper.
Was the bite itself painful?
Oh, it was incredibly painful. Yeah, it's like nothing I've ever experienced.
What snake do you think it was?
Well, the spread of the fang marks suggested that the snake was about 7 feet long. Chances are pretty good that it was a bushmaster.
Oh, wow. So that's one of the last things you want to get bitten by.
Yeah, absolutely. The human mortality rate from bushmaster bites with treatment is 50 to 60%. So by the time I was taken to a hospital, I had some really, really frightening symptoms of massive internal bleeding. It actually almost killed me. So I was pumped full of 12 ampules of anti-venom, which basically saved my life, but it was pretty touch and go there.
Absolutely.
It's a sobering reminder. In the Amazon, the normal rules just don't apply.
One thing to keep in mind, too, when you're going down slippery places here, if you go out for a handhold, always look at it first, because a lot of the trees here have spines on them. And a lot of times I've been sliding down a slope reached out and you really regret it if you grab like a spiny palm.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons why I bring these gloves with me. I sometimes put these on just because it gives you a little extra protection,
Yeah,
you know?
it's a good idea.
Yeah. Not found exactly what we're looking for, but we have found animals everywhere. It's an incredible place to be. It just feels like there's just life everywhere you look. You have to be careful, like Sean said, about what you're brushing up against or what's biting you, because everything seems to be interested in us. And as we cautiously move deeper into the jungle, we catch our first break in our hunt for the army ant.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, don't get too close.
Okay.
So these are paper wasps. And can you see how they're clustered on a leaf there? And that's a sign that their colony has just been raided by army ants. And what the wasps will do is they'll abandon the nest at the first sign of attack by the ants, and they'll cluster up nearby while the ants raid the nest and take the larvae out of it. So that's a really good sign, because that could indicate that there's a raiding colony of army ants right nearby.
Yeah, that feels like kind of clue number one, huh? We're kind of on the trail at this point.
I think so.
Sweet. All right, let's get moving. But just when we think we're closing in on the ants, we stumble on one of the jungle's deadliest inhabitants.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Whoa, whoa. Oh, yeah, well, we gotta back up.
Whoa. See. This is the infamous Brazilian wandering spider. These guys look like a lot of harmless spiders, but it's in the Guinness Book of Records as the most venomous spider in the world. They have a neurotoxin, which ends up causing respiratory problems and can lead to death and paralysis. One of the interesting things about their bite with males is that it can cause really painful erections that last hours. And its venom is actually being used in modern medicine to treat erectile dysfunction. It's a little docile right now, but don't be mistaken. These guys are super, super fast, highly aggressive. When it's in this kind of position right now, it actually looks like it's getting ready to jump. It's like a coiled spring. Everything's kind of down and tensed. Brazilian spiders are known to be able to jump great distances, almost 20 centimeters. So let's see how fast this thing can really move. Whoa! Run, Frank! Jesus Christ, Frank! My cameraman narrowly avoids a deadly encounter. Fucking hell. Frank, when you say run, fucking run, man. Incredibly, it manages to cover 2 meters of forest floor in a matter of seconds. All right, well, that was a good example. Let's get out of here. It's hot and extremely tough going because it's so humid. The sheer scope of the rainforest means that these ants could be anywhere. We've been out here now for about 4 or 5 hours. We've seen some great stuff, but we've not seen the ants yet. It's a little disheartening. Thankfully, Sean decides I've endured enough for one day and pulls the plug on today's hunt. Yesterday, to be honest, was a bit of a nightmare. I didn't really expect it to be that hard going. As you can see from my elbows, and I'm not even going to show you my back, everything in the rainforest is interested in humans. This is the handiwork of some truly tiny insects. I can only imagine what the giant mandibles of the army ant will do. But to find that out, I still have to track them down. So fingers crossed today I'll find these ants. After yesterday's failure, Sean's come up with a new plan.
There's a whole set of birds in these forests that make their living by following army ant swarms, and that's where they get their food. And those birds have really easily recognizable calls once you learn them. So as we're walking along, we should keep our ears open, and if we hear the calls of those ant birds, there's a really good chance that they will show us the way to a swarm front.
And what do they sound like? Because there's a few birds making noises now, but they're not.
Yeah, some of them have a really kind of a whiny sounding call, and there's another that has a kind of a descending series of whistles. And obviously by listening and looking for those birds, our range of detection of a swarm goes way up.
If we can track down these birds, they should lead us directly to the ants.
Oh, yeah.
Once you get off the beaten path, it's really important to have your wits about you. There are lots of things in the jungle that can do some serious harm to you. And we're so far away from a hospital. Oh, check it out. Snake. Wow. Check it out. The snake's about ready to attack. Look at that. It's got like a kind of cobra stance going on right now. This is a green parrot snake, and it's arboreal, which means it lives in trees. The reason why it's probably out in the open like this is if you look right here, it's eating something. Probably a frog, maybe a mouse. Any snake that's arboreal is an incredibly fast striker. If I went any closer to this snake, it would have a go at me for sure. Oh, he is feisty. This guy's getting, you know, a little annoyed for sure, so I want to leave him to it, let him go on his way. While I was taking a closer look at that snake, Sean's been hard at work tracking down the ant birds.
I hear some birds up ahead.
So it's that little chattering noise?
Yeah. I'm not sure that that's ant birds, but it sounds like they're low down.
Now, when they're in the middle of feeding and doing their thing, are they easily distracted or scared off the ant bird?
Yeah, some of the ant bird species are very sensitive, and they'll fly off at the slightest provocation. Others a little bolder, so we ought to really try to be quiet and sneak up on them, and we'll have a better chance of seeing them. I think we've got a big swarm right up there because it sounds like there's a lot of bird activity.
Oh, that's great. Let's go check it out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that's them.
Oh, I hear them. This is a great sign that we are really close. And the exciting thing is that it kind of feels like you're genuinely tracking something. You feel like a little nature detective. Oh, look. There's an ant bird. Now, they don't eat the ants. They eat the animals that the ants flush out. They have tiny little sharp beaks that they use to jump down, pluck an insect, and fly away before they get engulfed with ants.
Johnny, Tom! Venga, rescue!
Finally, after hours of slogging through this jungle, we found the object of my quest.
That's it. That's what we've been looking for.
Millions of army ants.
Oh, they're everywhere.
Out on a raid. Wow.
That's the Tarnbergellii. Oh, they're everywhere.
Before I let them loose on my own skin, I want to see just how much damage these formidable insects can do in their natural environment. I don't think I've ever seen so many of the same species of animal. It's just incredible. It's like a carpet of ants.
You can see that they move very closely together, so they're kind of able to share information by touch.
Their march to the raid front is unstoppable. If they encounter an obstacle, they'll work together to find a way across. So if they reach, say, a gap or a jump or a breadth of water, they'll just connect their bodies together, and then the ants will walk across them. Right here, you can see these ants holding onto each other's legs, and then the rest of the colony just walking past them like it's a living bridge. Very, very cool. Now, this column is going to lead out to what's called the front, and the front spreads out en masse, and then the ants just look for anything that they can sting, bite, and ultimately kill. So let's head off in this direction, see if we can find the raid. They can move at about 15 meters an hour, and they are doing it right now. They are putting in some serious pace. So it looks like we're seeing the beginning of the swarm front right here. The swarm or raid front is the business end of an army ant colony. It's a 30-meter wide swath of destruction that will lay waste to anything in its path. Oh, look, they have a katydid. Katydid is a type of grasshopper. But whenever they find an animal, they just engulf it. It looks like a mob, but it's not. Like their name suggests, army ants are a highly organized killing machine, and every member has a job to do. So the army ants will grab their prey and bite it to kind of hold it in position, and then their abdomen will come down underneath and sting it. Much of the dirty work is done by the workers, and standing guard over the slaughter are the larger soldier ants. There's just a relentlessness about them and a single-mindedness about them that is admirable, but also kind of scary at the same time. It must just be a nightmare for any animal living on the forest floor.
Dom, check this out. They've driven out a big tarantula.
Wow. Oh, so they're grabbing its legs.
Yep. But there it goes. There it goes. Yeah. It might save itself by climbing.
Oh, that's smart. Is there any ants up? Oh, there's not that many ants up here.
No.
So it'll climb, and just kind of wait it out, let the ants pass it by.
Yeah. Army ants cue into movement, and that's how they recognize prey.
That's such an incredible discipline to be around all these killers and just to stay totally still. I mean, look at this tarantula. It's like a statue right now. So it's clear that even the nastiest, meanest, biggest animals in the jungle will run away from these tiny little killers.
This tarantula has escaped certain death, but most won't be so lucky.
Oh, they have a scorpion. They have a scorpion. Obviously, a scorpion is a pretty formidable adversary. They have a venomous sting, they have really sharp pincers, and they're covered in armor plating.
Despite its frantic efforts to sting the attacking ants, the scorpion is quickly overwhelmed by the sheer numbers.
They're just pouring all over it. Looks like it's all over for the scorpion.
After the job they just did on that scorpion, I'm starting to get a little worried about my experiment.
Oh yeah, it's busier this way. We're right in the middle of it right now, as you can see. And you've got some soldier ants who are stood, keeping guard, and obviously directing traffic, telling the worker ants where to go. And this is kind of like a thoroughfare right here. You've got ants going up, ants going down, ants going across, left and right, and all the way up my legs.
But this attack isn't restricted to the forest floor. This war is in 3 dimensions. And in their ruthless quest for food, they'll scour every tree in their raid front.
Look at the size of this tree. It's absolutely ginormous. And the entire trunk is just full of army ants. Probably going up 100 feet at the least. I can't see further than that. The army ant that's leading the charge comes along, heads up the tree, and sends a chemical message up the tree. And it creates this insane pathway of ants. These ants also work by scent, you know. They work by the pheromone. So if I lick my finger and try and change the pheromone that these guys have, it's going to change the way they behave. Because now they smell something new. And as you can see right here, there's a tiny little traffic jam that's caused. And that's caused by the fact that the pheromone isn't there right now. What's there is the smell of my saliva. Then eventually the ants will send the pheromone and the pathway will link again.
Up ahead of the raid front, Sean's discovered a tempting new target for the colony.
This is like a battle of insect societies. See on the underside of that leaf there?
Yeah.
That's a paper wasp nest. Now, we might want to back up a little bit, actually, because, you know, we don't want to be in the sting zone when these things come out. So wasp larvae are a really great meal for the army ants. A lot of times I think of army ants as treating wasp brood as what would be to me like dark Belgian chocolate, just like the best of the best. So they really go crazy when they find a wasp nest.
It's like sushi for me.
It's actually closer to sushi.
Yeah, it is.
Better analogy, yeah.
Sure enough, the ants soon discover the nest, and all hell breaks loose.
Here come the wasps. One of the wasp's best defenses is to try to grab those first few army ant scouts. A lot of times what they'll do is just grab it and fly off with it and drop it. And if they can keep the ants from discovering the nest, they can sometimes escape being raided. More ants are making their way onto the nest now.
Yeah, you can see at the stem of the plant that they're onto it now.
Look at the flow.
Yeah.
Now they're excited.
There's so many ants now on the wasp nest that they're actually pouring out of the bottom. They're creating this kind of beard
of ants that got nowhere else to go.
You know, if a wasp landed back on there, she'd just be grabbed by those army ant workers and butchered right on the spot.
Seeing these ants lay waste to the forest is a once-in-a-lifetime experience. But now Sean wants to show us something even more amazing.
See, there's traffic going in both directions, so they're still actively raiding. There are ants that are heading out to the raid front to replenish the ones that are coming back, carrying things that they've butchered and captured. And those will all be brought back into the bivouac.
By following this column back through the jungle, Sean hopes to give us an up-close and personal look at the bivouac, the army ant's mobile lair. Army ants make nests, just like every other ant. But instead of making a nest out of organic material, army ants make nests out of living, breathing army ants. And that's called a bivouac.
Cool. They've holed up in a really dark place back in here.
All right, it's like a scene out of Indiana Jones. We're gonna go into an underground part of the jungle.
Holy cow!
Oh, wow. It's ginormous.
That is ridiculous! That is the biggest bivouac I've ever seen in my life. Just stretches for, you know, at least a meter, if not more.
You can't see an individual at all, huh? You just see a whole bunch of ants all massed together.
It's like a wall. You know, it's amazing that the ants, they're suspended basically from the ceiling of that cavity. So they're holding up that mass that you see there by linking their bodies together. So it's the strength of the ants that are holding that thing together. That's an organic building. It's got rooms and hallways inside of it, and they can adjust the structure of it so they can control temperature.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, do you have any idea of the estimation of the number in there, Sean?
I've never seen one anywhere close to this size. Could be 3-4 million ants in that colony.
Amazing.
I've been working on army ants for over 10 years now, and this just so incredibly blows away the scale of anything I've ever seen before.
It's incredibly impressive. I dread to think what would happen if something kind of broke loose and they all started to fall at this point.
Yeah, we wouldn't want to be here for that.
Are we in any serious danger at this point?
If we got too close, you could easily be swarmed by thousands, if not tens of thousands of workers, and almost instantly, they move really fast, and they'll just climb right up on your body and start stinging.
It would be foolhardy to linger in here after dark. So with only a couple of hours of daylight left, Sean decides we'd better head back to the station. The plan is to return in the morning with equipment needed to document this bivouac and to grab some ant volunteers for my man versus ant experiment. With the colony found, it's time for some well-deserved relaxation. How many opportunities in life do you get to say that you swam in the Amazon? Maybe it'll help out my insane amount of mosquito bites.
You just swim against the current. It's like a little mini workout. Anaconda!
So yesterday was a great day. We found the ants, we found the bivouac. Now all that's left is for me to collect a sample of these army ants and in a controlled environment, see what it feels like to be bitten and stung by these amazing animals. So Sean and I are on our way to the bivouac now to collect a bunch of ants. Oh, they're gone.
No way. Oh, I don't believe it.
That's crazy.
Wow. I mean, that whole huge mass just vanished on us. There's not a single ant left behind.
Yeah.
Where there were several million of them hanging just yesterday evening. Yeah, they must have left last night after we last checked on them.
That's wild. Sean felt that this colony was going to stay put for at least another week, but it's moved on during the night. With so many mouths to feed, It needs to be constantly on the move in search of fresh hunting grounds.
What do we do now to find him again?
Well, they probably headed off roughly in the same direction as yesterday's raid. They usually emigrate along the raid route from the previous day, so our best bet is to head out in that direction to search for them.
Finding 4 million ants doesn't sound very hard, but in a jungle this big, and with a 12-hour head start, they could be anywhere. If we can't track them down, the plan to see for myself just how much pain they can inflict isn't going to happen, and I've come all this way for nothing. To speed up the hunt, we decide to split up.
Oh, cool. Check it out. His little tortoise. Now, let's see if it's a he or a she. You can work this out by tipping him upside down. And the male is gonna have quite pronounced spikes right here, as you can see. This tortoise doesn't. So this tortoise is a she, and they can live easily 40 or 50 years. Right here, she's got a pretty significant scratch. That's probably gonna be a big cat, jaguar possibly. And there's another one right here. These guys are incredibly tough. You're not gonna get through that shell. It's the only defense that an animal like this has when they're so slow. I'm gonna put you down now. Let you go on your way.
As the hours pass, I find that I'm now looking for more than the army ants.
The jungle's extremely disorientating because every tree looks like the same tree.
At some point during the afternoon, I seem to have wandered off the trail.
I could easily be going round and round in circles.
I can't say that I relish the thought of having to be rescued by Sean, so it's time to find my way back before they send out a search party. But in the Amazon...
Holy smokes.
Sometimes even finding solid ground can be a challenge.
Swamp. This could be the last you ever hear from me. Look at this, look. The final steps of Dom. Oh, like 2.5 feet taller.
With the sun about to set and no sign of a search party, I may be in for a long night alone in the Amazon. And if that isn't bad enough, I've just found something else that's got my pulse racing.
Whoa. Holy smokes. It's right here. It's called the bullet ant. And this is its nest. Down here. Bullet ants are one of the most feared insects in the world. It has an incredibly painful sting and bite. They're called bullet ants because the sensation of their sting is attributed to feeling like you've been shot by a bullet. These guys make me nervous. Mean-looking thing. All this guy wants to do right now is find something living and breathing and wallop it with its sting. Extremely aggressive. It feels like you are walking on hot coals with a rusty nail in the sole of your foot. This is one of the last animals in the jungle that I'd like to be stung by. I'm gonna put him back. There's not a huge amount of bullet ants that live in a colony, about 200 or 300. Well, these things mean business.
Even these guys are no match for a 1 million-strong colony of army ants, which I still need to find if I'm ever going to perform my Dom versus army ant pain test.
Here's the path.
Hours later, ego bruised but decidedly unbroken, I make it back to camp.
Hey, Dom.
It looks like Sean's been about as lucky as I have. I'm hoping to have a chance to catch my breath, but he has other plans.
Sometimes they raid at night, and we also have a good chance of finding emigration columns crossing the trails in the evening.
You wanna go out again tonight? All right.
I'm a little wary about stomping through this predator-filled jungle at night. But since I'm leaving tomorrow, if I want to conduct my experiment, it's now or never.
Oh, check it out, Sean. Look. Never seen Sean. I can't
can't go 3 or 4 steps without seeing something new. But I have to admit that I wouldn't like to be here for too long in the middle of the night, because the jungle is kind of scary. It's like got a net. What do you call this spider?
Ooh, that's the net casting spider.
That's a great one.
That's fantastic. That's a great find.
Because look, right here, it spins this little net here, which it holds in its legs, and then it's going to wait for something to walk by on this leaf here, and bang, it'll just throw its net out.
Oh.
Nice. Really cool spider. There's just animals everywhere, but unfortunately, no army ants. But we're finding clues that they may be near.
Check these guys out. It's almost like Christmas ornaments. So these are caterpillars. What they've done here is they're dropped down on a silken thread to sleep, because a lot of nighttime predators, including night-raiding army ants, will come up and scour the plant. So by hanging down on this thread while they're sleeping, they're protecting themselves. It's like each leaf has its own caterpillar hanging down.
After hours of scouring the jungle, we finally hit the jackpot.
There's a little column of ants heading off into the forest down here.
Nice.
Why don't you go on up ahead and see if you can track it, and then you can stop and I'll take over.
Now the tricky part. We've got to track them back to the bivouac through thick jungle in the dead of night.
Yeah, still got him. I got him right here. You want to take it past this tree?
Yep.
I can't see him past there.
Yeah. I got them. They're going out the other side. Here they are.
Certainly feels like the jungle's closing in on you a little bit more when you get off the trail. Not only that, but we just saw a bullet ant, and now I've lost it. It's never a good idea to lose a bullet ant.
Hey, Dom.
Yeah?
I've got the bivouac.
Sweet.
So just
Nice.
follow my light down.
Cool, we got it. Let's go.
It's just really amazing bivouac.
Wow.
It's just stunning. I mean, it just goes from this cavity up here, maybe about 8 feet off the ground,
Yeah.
all the way down here.
Oh, that is wild.
Isn't that cool?
So they're in this entire hollowed out tree?
I think so. Yeah, we're just seeing part of the bivouac kind of sticking out through these cracks in the tree. And if you look down below here, you can see the refuse pile. Those are all discarded hard parts of insects, shells of beetles and wings of cockroaches and things.
So worst case scenario, Sean, if you really disturbed the bivouac, what would happen next?
Well, actually, I learned that the hard way. One of the first bivouacs I ever found. I was just so amazed by that structure, and I really wanted to know, what was going on inside. So I took a stick and I started kind of poking around at it. And that was something I will never do again, because the ants just explode out. They were running across the ground, and before I knew it, they'd covered my entire body. So I actually had to run off and strip naked. Probably not the best place for us to hang around at night.
So before we overstay our welcome, we grab our ant volunteers for tomorrow's experiment and head back to camp. The jungle at night is just a completely different place, and I couldn't go 3 or 4 steps without seeing something amazing. The great news is we found the bivouac, so we can conduct the experiment tomorrow of how it feels to be swarmed by army ants. The bad news is we can conduct the experiment tomorrow. So I'm coming to the end of my trip. I think I've proved pretty conclusively that these army ants are not to be messed with. We've seen them have a go at a tarantula, take out a scorpion, and they've nailed pretty much everything in their path. Now I want to see how the army ants do with an animal much larger in size, an animal about my size, namely me. So I've set up this little experiment here, which is going to involve this little cage, and here there's about 100 worker ants, and then we've got about 12 to 15 soldiers, and these guys have mandibles almost half the size of their body, and they can easily draw blood. I'm a little apprehensive. I don't think this is the best idea in the world, but this is one of the things that I wanted to do if I came to the Amazon. And as far as I know, no one has ever done this kind of experiment. No time like the present. Let's do this thing. Let's do soldiers first. One's on me. Soldier biting me. Ow. Now that the first ant struck, it will release a pheromone telling the others to attack. Ow. They're all on the side of my hand. The workers definitely feel worse than the soldiers, but I think that's because the workers just go for the thing. Ouch. It's bad when it's one ant, but when it's a lot of ants, it just gets exponentially worse. It's kind of itchy and it just feels like a hot pin going inside you. Oh, there's quite a few ants on me now. Ow, ouch. I think they definitely sent off that pheromone because that felt more like a swarm. And I tell you what's interesting, your hand kind of starts involuntarily kind of shaking. There's nothing you can do about it. But, wow, these guys are vicious. If these ants were all over my body, I'd be in some real trouble. Ouch. It's kind of a little swollen and a little red, and my fingers kind of feel like they've been hit by a hammer. And I would say ants 1, Dom 0. Ow. I think it's only fair to concede defeat like a gentleman and return these little guys to their rightful home. I really admire their ability to communicate as a unit. Everything that I've seen has had a flight response to these ants, and if they can't get away in time, they become dinner. For that alone, I really do think these animals have earned their reputation as king of the jungle. I had fun hanging out. See you guys later.